Hi, everybody.
Hello.
Hi, Mark. How you doing out there?
Yeah, I'm good, Kevin. How are you?
Good, thanks. I'm just getting set up here, and we'll start real soon. But what are you up to there? It's in England, and so it's like far later.
Yeah, it's just after 9 o'clock at night, nine of the PM, and we tend to eat quite late, so I just sort of nicely had some food and
Oh, here we
getting
go.
ready for this.
Getting the chat window lined up. Anybody wants to sign in and say that they can hear us, that would be also very nice. Then I can also see that the comments are working on YouTube. What have you done today there? It's a Sunday.
Um, so Sunday, yeah, it's I don't have many of these days, but I've had a very quiet day. Mainly because the weather's been not very good. We've had some incredible weather for about a month or two. And then the last 4 or 5 days, it sort of broke and it's gone back to being cold and wet and windy. So I haven't really felt like doing because I've been out sitting out a lot, outside. So today has been quiet. I think you need a quiet day occasionally, don't you? Really?
Mark Spybey and quiet. I don't know.
It doesn't often happen, to be
Troublemaker.
absolutely honest.
Thanks, Tony Lipford. Hello from Nelson. Audio is loud and clear. That's great to hear, my friend. So, yeah, where do we start? The 25th anniversary of Furnace. Can you believe that it's already a quarter century?
No,
I know,
yes and no.
really.
Yes and no. I mean, it's easy to intellectually work out that it was 25 years ago, but does it feel like 25 years ago then? No, no.
So, I guess because, the story goes that, Dwayne passed away literally just as we finished the mixes, pretty much. So he never even heard the final album, never heard the record. So for me, like his death and this album, everything kind of like tied together.
Yeah,
And stepping forward in time, I find that there's like the 25 years that it's been. It doesn't seem like very long to me at all. As you hold on to memories and all sorts of things from the time, you tend to you're thinking about it so much that sometimes I realize, God, I'm dwelling on a thought that's like a quarter century old
yeah,
all the time. But the creation of this album was a really unique experience. I love your background, Mark, by the way. uh, when we all met, I've said this story before, but it's worth noting again that I had met Mark, and Mark was really at the time instrumental in helping me because I was having like some sort of turmoil and difficulties in my life, and I was like, needed. I think I was seeing a therapist, and but I also had become friends with Mark, and going over to Mark's place was super therapeutic because we would jam on super minimalist ideas, and I found it to be quite spiritual. Like it's almost like meditation. And so we brought. I remember bringing you to the studio one day, and I remember that Phil had come over because he was Dwayne's friend, and we were all meeting, and so we were bringing these philosophies together of Dwayne's interest in techno and Phil's youthful experience already shining through in techno, and so like smashing head on into our meditation music sort of theory.
yeah,
It was like almost a theory in itself. But so the jams were discussed. How would you approach that? So the thing was is to hook everybody up, basically in their own sort of section of the studio, and then the only thing we would really discuss would be a tempo, and we would basically send everybody a MIDI clock signal, and we'd say, okay, this tempo is going to be 123, and that's it. And people would work for we'd work for a few minutes on getting sounds, ideas, and whatever, and then we wouldn't even really review it. We would roll tape. I tried to find some of the tapes today,
Oh, right.
but what I did find was like, we would end up like laying down mixes onto these DATs, the jam DAT.
All right.
Remember the jam DAT? So, what do you got there?
It's the furnace. It's hard to say. It's the furnace. The inside of microscopic is the photograph of us in the studio. I got this strange effect on. But it's the Clancy photographs. I mean, everybody who's got the records can see them. Because it does tell you that a lot about the studio, doesn't it, really? Especially that one that's...
Let's see if you can see this here.
Don't know where it was now. It's on a CD, isn't it?
Check this out.
It's just insane, isn't it?
2 levels
Well,
deep.
actually, it's not, because have we recorded everything we ever did, really?
It's 2 levels deep.
Yeah.
So yeah, these are jam live recording, master recordings that we did.
I don't know, I can't find the photograph now, but if Simon Paul's kicking around, he'll know, because he did the sleeve for the redo album. But there's that photograph of us in the studio, and you get an idea. But that was only one room. I mean, what folks probably don't understand is that Subconscious was like 5 rooms, wasn't it?
It was.
1, 2, 3, 5 rooms. And
Wow.
at one point, there was like a drum room next door to the studio, kind of like console room, where you had a lot of synths. And then there was the big room that we all used to congregate in to do jams, and that's where the coffee machine was. And then there was a couple of small rooms that I occupied at various times, and I think Chris Peterson was in one as well for a while. So, I mean...
Chris did all his early Decree stuff.
Yeah, that's right.
In there.
Yeah.
And I believe they were working on some Will or something as well during that time. And then we also had a guy named Mike Victory, who also had a studio up in the front. But at certain times, we occupied most of the rooms. And then what was cool is that there was 2 bank vaults in this place. And so it was built like a steel fortress. And oddly, we could get away with making a lot of noise in that place. I'm talking about 525 Seymour, suite number 800.
Even though it was an office block.
It was an office block, which I cannot...
It was quiet inside.
Yeah, how big it was, and then how... I mean, it accommodated us, but I think like what the office was meant to be was maybe, say, set up for a banker or a dentist or something like that.
Yeah.
But of course, then we hauled in, hey, Simon, we hauled in drum kits, and actually that's where the first Drumosaurus was created for the first download tour.
It was like a kind of an experimental factory, really, wasn't it? Because things were being made all of the time there. It was never ever complete, because it just kept evolving. I mean, I do remember the jams, because it was important. It's the first time I'd ever, because there was a simple table, I think Rave gave it to you, that linked delay times to BPMs. So I didn't have a MIDI signal because I wasn't using MIDI. But what you would say is, this BPM, look on your chart, and then you convert the delay to the BPM, and it actually works. I mean, some of you out there will know what I'm talking about. I don't really know what I'm talking about. All I know is that this chart worked. And so every time we did a new take, we might, I don't know, sometimes we would improvise around a theme for hours, then I just simply redial in the my effects units so that they were linked to the beats.
I'm just getting a note here that, sorry, Mark, I'm just getting a note here that the link on Patreon didn't work. How did you guys get to the chat if the link wasn't working? I'm going to try and fix that while we're chatting here.
Okay. I don't think something.
Hey, Tony Lippert, could you do me a favor and post on the link it on the topic itself, the correct link. Oh, good. Tony's the man. Thank you, Tony. Yeah, I don't know what happened. It's sometimes this happens where the link doesn't get on there appropriately, and I've had to redo it a couple of times. But I see everybody. Hey, Lori Cole in the house.
Hey.
Didn't you work with Lori and Ivana on one of your last shows?
Yes. Laurie's been on several of my records. Yeah.
That's awesome. Lori in the Hood. Yeah. It could have been in the adjustment of this. We actually noticed that it was not set up right, so we made an adjustment in the settings for the chat, and then it may have gone awry. But nevertheless, it seems like people are getting the link and they're in here. Hello, everybody. Again, we hadn't actually gotten very far, but one thing that I did show that I'll probably show again is the box of jams. Look at the size of that. It's 2 levels deep. This is basically how we would record a lot of the things, and we would notate them on such like night, download tape number, and then what these lines on it mean is that they've been digitized, so they've been actually backed up. I'm not noticing any in there that are not backed up. But what I am noticing in here, Mark, of note, is a box of live recordings I've downloaded from the Eyes of Stanley Payne tour.
No way. Wow.
So what do we got there? It's back.
Eugene. Wow.
Eugene, Dallas, San Francisco.
DNA Lounge. Dallas was the trees.
Hartford? Hartford?
Herford, Germany.
Hartford. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that was the first show we did.
London?
Camden Underground.
Oh, you played Halloween night?
You and I did. London, Ontario.
Oh, it's the DVOA show from...
oh, right. That's the show in London. Do you remember that we blew the power about 4 times and then had to finish? We couldn't actually play. Probably did 3 songs.
It's always interesting to go through these things because you'll always find something that you've never seen before. This is the Eyes of Stanley Payne Masters.
Oh, wow.
Neatly done. Yeah, there's good stuff in here.
I think what that points out to me, especially in relation to Furnace, is that we did a lot of work together. I mean, I don't know how many times we...
Stacks of it.
Yeah, I don't know how many times we worked in the same space together, but it felt like a lot. And I mean, I think that was necessary, really, wasn't it? Because you get a sort of feel for each other. But I mean,
I think we're addicted to working on stuff. So basically, I think I was speaking about this on the chat that earlier before most of you probably got the link that Mark, for me, when I first met him, was like therapeutic. He was like really like this guy that was like very helpful. Like Mark is an occupational therapist, so he has a natural way of just making you feel at peace and at calm with everything. And so he brought that into the album, and I thought, like, wow. I mean, you got to understand, at the time when we made Furnace, I think Ogre had quit Skinny Puppy that month.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
25 years ago.
Yeah.
So we were sitting there, and I thought, like, wow, what's the greatest thing that could ever happen is that you meet a guy that's gonna work with you in the band that's a therapist. It was a blessing. So coming together and doing the jams, there was this magical feeling that I knew that Dwayne was also in need of some peaceful energy like that. And Phil coming in was a breath of fresh air. I don't know how he was so experienced at 23 years of age, but the creation of the music just seemed to be something that each person was like a different plant. And we put them all together, we'd see how what fruit they'd bear and how they'd respond to the light. And it was really kind of like, you couldn't really count the minutes. You'd be like, you wouldn't be looking at the clock going, boy, I'm getting bored, I got to get home and watch some TV. It'd be like, I remember we'd look at the clock and it would be like about 5 hours later and we'd still be sitting down on shit and we'd be like, hey, it's 1 o'clock in the morning. Probably got to get going home now. It was quite a magical time. So I think
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was. I wouldn't have missed it for the world. I mean, for those of you who have not experienced this, then you're probably going to it's going to probably sound a little bit twee. But actually, when you get to the point where you're working with people where you feel you don't need to speak to each other, that when you're actually making music, that's the most effective form of communication. You know that something is happening. And to me, that happened with Download. It happened fairly quickly, really. But I think that was because of the compatibility of the people, I mean, I can remember you talking to me about Phil a long time before I met him, because he said, look, Dwayne knows this guy. He's really, really good. We think this is going to work really well with this project. And so there's this kind of lining up of the personalities involved, isn't it, really? That it made a lot of difference once we'd started to work together, that there was a kind of like togetherness. And I think that was, I mean, we had fun. We had fun playing, like working together.
I don't know. I thought it was more of an accident actually, because Phil basically was running the record store across the street.
That's right. That's right.
Wayne was getting all his techno 12 inches and stuff from, and so I mean, I did think that there was a natural thing about how he'd cross the street and just come up for a while. At first, that seemed how he was introduced, but
that's where I first met him, in the record store, Odyssey.
Yeah.
Because I think you'd said, "Oh, he works there," so I thought I'd go in, and you couldn't miss him really, could you? Because he always seemed to wear this stripy T-shirt and this huge green toque. Do you remember that hat? I think there's a picture of it on maybe even on Furnace. But I mean, it was huge. It was like this, like noddy hat, it was massive. It's really floppy, and
I get trouble down here for calling things toques. They don't know what that word is down in America.
Oh, really? Really?
So they call them what? Beanies, right?
Beanies.
Beanies, right? Biggie? Oh, yeah, beanies. Yeah, beanies.
I don't think it's descriptive of the hat, though, is it? Because it was like.
Yeah, no.
Whoa!
My memory of Phil, my first memories of Phil is that he comes from the days of where you'd have the telephone answering machine that would have the cassette tape in it, and there would be a speaker on that, so that when someone called, you could hear the message being left in the room.
Yeah.
And he would like leave 30, 40, 50-second long messages that was often like him sort of performing some vocal. I wish I'm going to actually, I swear I have some of those tapes, because it was the grand old day where we used to sample off these tapes quite a bit.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. I remember that.
Joey asked how you and I met. Yeah, I told that story on a previous chat, but I can tell it again in a sort of condensed version. But of course, Mark is part of the seminal band Soviet Friends, and always a fan of the band. And so, long story short, they were doing a tour. Their date got canceled in Vancouver, and somehow I made the show happen by getting a venue and then putting it together and bringing down the production and making sure it all happened. And then it ended up happening. And I was blown away. And the guys all gave me their contacts and stuff like that. And Mark wasn't actually in the band at that point anymore. He had already left. But I didn't, I didn't even know any of the guys. So later, someone at Network said, "Hey, one of the guys from Soviet France moved to town, and you know those guys, right?" I said, "Oh yeah, hook me up." So that's how I got hooked up with you. Is what? Oh, hey, it's Kevin. I worked with you on your show. Oh yeah, I quit the band before that. Oh yeah, well, okay, well I guess we're friends anyway now. So then we started hanging out, and as I said at that time, it was like a crucial period where a crucial period. Uh, just sorry, Rihanna showed me a message there and knocked my train of thought off. But it was a crucial period of time where, after Last Rites and approaching the process, I believe that was when we first met Mark. It was sometime before I went to Malibu to do the process. So I think I was pretty messed up a little bit, not on drugs or anything, but just basically in my mind.
I think it was early 1993 or late 1992.
Yep, that
And
makes
there was just one missing detail, really, which is that I sent a tape of music I was making to this lady called June Scoodler, who was a DJ on a show at CITR
right.
and called Mechanical Object Noise. And she happened to bump into either you or somebody from Network later that day and say, "Oh, this guy sent me a tape and he was in Soviet France. And I know that Kevin put the show on for Soviet France." And so she was the kind of conduit between whoever and you and I, which was really neat.
But I do remember during that period that I discussed with you the idea of a concept of making a band called Download based on the concept of the last track of Last Rites, following a concept where really beats and sort of production in that level were not really supposed to be as important as where we could take it experimentally, because everybody at that time was saying, "Man, you should make whole albums like Download." And even though that was more of a Dwayne created track, we all in essence wanted to follow suit. So that was like the unique concept was to create that album with that concept in mind, but with everybody wholeheartedly partaking. It didn't end up sounding like Download from Last Rites anymore, even though we did end up performing that track live a few times, which was kind of a gas.
I think it was, I think the actual product, if you like, was a very concise explanation of the kinds of music that we were into at that time. I listened to it today, actually. I thought, I'm going to listen to this because I haven't listened to it for a while. And I thought, I needed to. Sometimes people ask me difficult questions like, what does this word mean from that track? I'm like thinking, I can't remember the track. But I did listen to it, and I was thinking, and what I also did was I thought, let's see what other people have said about it. So I did a little bit of web searching and coming up with some descriptions of what people have written about it. Like it's really an album of mostly directionless noodling. Is something that I read.
It was improvised.
It was improvised, yeah. I think it did have direction, but it was this real collision, wasn't it? And that's why we called it Furnace, because it was this collision between something melodic and pretty at times, and then like just boom, boom, boom. Like the track Mother's Son. It starts out really quite beautiful, and then it just goes boom, da 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 boom, da da. It's like every time I ever did that live, I just felt my head kind of like wanting to bang off the wall. Do you know what I mean? It was just boom, really so powerful. And it was, for me, that was like how it was. It was when we were doing it. There were times where it was quiet and beautiful and melodic and then discordant and drony, and then that kind of really at the time very kind of strange techno stuff that was going on. I mean, that we were all into, and then just this layer over the top of just weirdness. Do you know what I mean? But it was a real furnace. It was a furnace of sounds, and I actually, I always thought it was. You have a different relationship with every record you make, don't you? And for me, although it was a very sad time when we made The Eyes of Stanley Payne, there was a cohesiveness about the product that was made, which I always thought, well, I can relate to. And but when I listened to Furnace again today, I'm like thinking, no, this is where it was. This is the genesis of the sound. So it was a very, it's a landmark. I mean, I'll tell you what somebody said about it, which I just found hilarious. You'll probably find this funny. You may find it hard to digest. You may not like it right now, but at least acknowledge that your grandkids will almost certainly study it in art school.
Yeah.
I didn't write that, by the way. That was just off, I think it was Amazon or something, like the reviews that people put. I mean, I don't know if grandkids will study in art school, but it's a nice idea.
Lord Kinbody says, how did you record Omni-Man? And that track had a little bit of a unique thing, because I remember that. So the story goes is that during right after the recording of most of the improvisations, Dwayne had reached his apex. Story goes is that he needed to go back to his parents' house in Edmonton, Alberta, which is quite a distance from Vancouver, to recover. He was at a point in his life where he needed recovery. And he chose to go to his parents' house and went there and spent almost a month recovering. And so during that month, I did basically all the assembly of almost the entire album and the editing of all of it. But we hadn't made Omni-Man yet. And there was pieces of Omni-Man, and there was a structure for Omni-Man, but it was missing like a couple things. But I remember Dwayne came back and he was rejuvenated, and played him this idea, and he immediately went on his K2000 and he did the bass line.
Yeah.
And I was so impressed by Dwayne's always his ability to just sort of like do something that would just fit right in. But then also, sometimes I think back on actually how he did something. And it took me a long time to figure out how he did a couple of things on Omni-Man. And so if people are interested in technical details, what he was doing was clocking an arpeggiator. This is a theory I have of what he did. He was clocking an arpeggiator, which the arpeggiator was triggering singular drum samples that were in his S1000. So each note was triggering a different sample of the arpeggio. He could change the note structure of the arpeggio so that the beat would theoretically change. So if you have an arpeggio, it would be like, or could reverse that or whatever. But that's a standard thing, and that's a way to make interesting rhythms. But he still had another thing going on, which took me a couple of years to figure out, that he had set up on his samples, each sample, so that when the mod wheel was adjusted, it was also changing the start point on the samples. So if a sample was, like, say, more than one hit long in some cases, it could advance to another sample or part way during the sample or part way, and thus giving this broken rhythm structure. And that in itself, right there, I was like thinking, like, I mean, trust me, I did not figure that out right away. It took me, a while of like thinking about everything and what I'd heard and what I saw and how I'd gone about doing it in one take without any editing or without anything. It was like really like impressive. And so, Dwayne was doing things always that were like one step ahead of the curve. So if you like look inside the K2000, you know, you'll see that the guy Ray Kurzweil is an absolute genius. And the way that that synth, Dwayne always said that was the most well-structured synthesizer he'd ever played. And if you look inside the parameters inside the editing of the structural sort of approach of that keyboard, you can actually get into modes which are actually called fun. And these fun modes are almost like in itself, like at that time especially, I mean, even when people were just grasping at how to get into, you know, basically the deeper angles of synthesis, you know, Kurzweil threw in fun modes. So basically, Dwayne was all over the fun modes and shit like that as well. And so what was really nice is that I could see that Dwayne was exchanging a lot of info about this with Phil. And I think that's largely how Phil managed to also get at 23 years of age, very advanced very quickly. But so to me, the Omni-Man track basically kind of like marks that time where like his knowledge and his theoretical approach on things was way ahead. I honestly believe that he would have made some just such incredible recordings if he had survived.
Yeah.
So the story goes is that we went from there to another studio called Ocean Studios to do the mix. One Omni-Man being one of them, of course. And then I think we did Mother Son and a couple of songs there. We weren't ever supposed to say that Bob D or whatever his name was actually Ray. Ray, for some reason, didn't want to be credited on the Furnace album. But that is something that I don't think I've ever said that yet, because I think that was like some sort of weird thing I'm not supposed to say maybe. But so essentially we had entered this space to mix the songs. And things started getting crazy in there because it was a church or something to that effect. So it started to have some weird haunted stuff started happening. We were told that we weren't supposed to walk into a certain part of the studio because the studio was closed during that time. And then one of our friends came to visit us at the studio, and he entered the studio through a door and walked through this part of the studio, not realizing that he had stepped in a puddle of engine oil outside. And so his footprints were tracked all the way through the part where we were supposed to walk on the carpet through into the control room. And so do you remember we spent like, while we were mixing, we were also like steam cleaning the floor like 40 times.
I do remember that now, yeah. I do remember it, yeah.
It was a very odd time. And then, so, I mean, I guess the worst part of the story is that I was working on Microscopic at the same time in the side studio. And so mixing going on in one room, editing going on in another room, and so on and so on. And then all of a sudden, Dwayne came in the room and he said, "I need to talk to you." I'm like, "Are you okay?" And he took me out into the hallway and he goes, "Do I look weird to you? Do I seem strange?" And I said, "No, what's wrong?" And he said, "I've been using again." And I thought to myself, when did he have time to leave? I mean, yeah, but apparently he had time to leave those sessions and go and, I guess, score some heroin somewhere. He had you know, been kind of like back in. He was kind of saying, and I felt my heart drop. I felt like I was about to start crying right at that moment. He told me that because I felt so bad that he had just come from his parents' house and he had just had all this excitement. And then right here he was saying he had to go. I said, "What do you want? What do you need to do?" He says, "I think I need to go back." And I said, "Okay." And literally right at that moment, I drove him to his home to get his stuff. And he went on the bus back to Edmonton again. Of course, never to return. But we finished the mixes of those songs in the studio. But I'll never forget the last vision that I had, Dwayne. He was super sad. Do you remember he was sitting under his keyboards?
Yeah, I do. The night before that, I'd been for dinner with him, just me and him, and we went to this place on, I think it was Richard Street, called Cafe S'il vous plaît. And we'd spent the evening talking, and he was not in a good place. So yeah, it's, yeah, I do remember him being under the keyboard. Yeah, I do.
He was, I think that he felt like let down in himself. I think he was like, he was so crushed about, well, for one thing, like Ogre, when Ogre quit Skinny Puppy, it was like in June. I swear that did some major damage to Dwayne's soul. I mean, I could sense that he could not see how we were going to survive. You know, I mean, he was being real. He was like, well, download's great and download's great and everything, but I don't know how we're going to survive through this. He never physically said that to me, but I had the feeling that he felt that.
It's inevitable, really, if you think about it, isn't it? There's obviously going to be questions about how things are going to be. But I know he wanted to tour. I know that he was into the idea of playing it live. I mean, going back to Omniman, I just, for me, Omniman is the kind of like perfect introduction to Furnace, because it's got all of the elements of Furnace in it. Not some of the more harsher stuff, because Sega Sang, Mother Song gets into some pretty heavy territory, but it's got that kind of ethnic thing. I remember, I think it might have been added afterwards. I think because you quite often would say to me, "Hey, Mark, let's do something here. Let's like," because the introduction sounds like it's been kind of like, you know, glued into it. So it's that, you know.
Oh, that was a different recording.
Sorry?
Yeah, that was a different recording, that
Yeah.
piece.
Because I was listening to that today, and I recognized the fact that I had a cold when I did it. I could hear that I had a cold in my voice, you know, but it was with the strum stick that you gave me. And then right in the middle, there's this kind of like piece where you hear all of these chanting Chennai kind of things. And I know where that came from. I'm pretty sure that was Phil, because I'd lent Phil this CD of kind of third world music, and he really liked it, and he was sampling it a lot, and he used it a lot in the track B Hatch. So I'm pretty sure that those sort of dueling trumpets that you hear, these Chennais, these Eastern kind of trumpets, is from that as well. So it's got all of the elements. It's got the kind of like, you know, that strange beat, the really weird kind of bass line. And then, of course, over the top of it, you've got these weird sounds, and then you've got Genesis's voice coming in and out as well. So yeah, it captures all of the different elements, really. It still sounds to me strange. It does. It just, you know, I think, you know what, you know how I don't know. I think everybody's going to have a different feeling about it, but there's no way that I could say this record sounds like it was made in 1995. Do you know what I mean? It doesn't sound like a child of its time to me. It sounds alien still. It sounds different, and I don't know. Maybe that's, for me anyway, that's a good thing. You know, definitely doesn't sound. I definitely can't date it because of any particular sound in it. It's not like Phil Collins is drumming, you know.
I feel again that it was one of those albums where I have a funny feeling that certain albums kind of like semi-make themselves.
Yeah.
It's not really that you had a certain direction, or, well, you had a direction, but we didn't say, hey, let's make a song like Omni-Man. It's basically just kind of like, you know, what came as a result of like us all hooking up all of our gear at the same, we discuss a tempo, we get some few parts going, and then jive off what you were doing and what everyone was doing, and it would be like this kind of like end collision result. I think that's why there's a song called Collision on stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
Very, very collision oriented style of making music.
But it's again, it's furnace, isn't it? It's the kind of like, you know, is it a beautiful picture, or is it a beautiful, you know,
Um,
rural landscape, or is it a belching industrial city?
I'll
It's
still
got
never
all,
forget the first time I saw that 3D what's called venticular sleeve.
yeah, I don't know. Is it lenticular?
I haven't seen a lot of. I'm not sure if that company like went out of business or if it became obsolete or whatever. But so that was a particular company, yeah, lenticular. There was a specific company that was doing that, or what happened. But like, so when I saw the sleeve, I remember Dwayne saw it too. We were like, oh shit, I've never seen anything like that. So in a weird way, it really was special because it was almost like a, you know, as much as a surprise as to us the creation of the music was.
Well, it's around the same time the Red Hot Chili Peppers released an album with one of those sleeves as well, didn't they? By the same company, Geladi Design.
Yeah, after I'm not sure if before or after at the same time, but I mean we did a bunch. We did Music for Grass Bars, Microscopic was like that, Furnace was like that, and then so they started to do, you know, a bunch of other bands and covers and sleeves like that at that time. But I think it like phased out after a while. I mean, I don't think
Because
you don't see it around
Digipacks,
anymore.
yeah, probably because Digipacks became more popular. I don't know.
Yeah, because
But
like so Digipacks at that point were like the record company used to just, you know, forbid uh, Digipack making for us guys. Um, you'd have to try and beg to get more than just like a you know CD tray. And so the actually the breath of fresh air that I should probably mention was the meeting of Offbeat Records. Stefan Herweg from German record label Offbeat from Gelsenkirchen, Germany. Okay, I have to say that that guy and that record company really were the most supportive thing that helped create Download. Really, they funded really the creation of Furnace. We had Cleopatra on the stage, which actually did a good job. Actually, I think Cleopatra was the one that hooked up the lenticular sleeve.
that's right. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
right. Yeah.
So Brian Perot, and so what I loved about Offbeat though was their devotion into seeing us play live. And when we did the tour, when we finally flew over to Europe to do our show, we had more gear than Skinny Puppy Tags.
That's right.
We had it was like Pink Floyd level of gear. I remember it had to be carried in a separate truck other than where we couldn't tow it behind our bus.
No.
So they got us a tour bus, but they got us a tour bus driver that was like so into camping that we'd wake up and you'd be out in the middle of nature somewhere in the woods, out next by a river.
I remember camping in Denmark for like 2 or 3 days because remember, we're in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
We were surrounded by these other campers. And we were like going out for a walk and there was nowhere to go. And people would be going, hello, hello. It's like, that was great.
The got to give one other secret about this whole thing that nobody's ever brought it up. So the other secret is that so if you look at the end of Process, the last song on Process is called what? Anybody? Simon would know. But actually, as even Simon doesn't know this, I don't think. I'm looking for someone to type it. Oh, no one's typing it yet. Someone wrote France. Nope. Oh, there you go. There's Poop in My Butt. I love that. That's a great name. There's Poop in My Butt. Cellar heat. That's right. So what is cellar heat? Think about it. Something in your cellar that provides heat.
Furnace.
Furnace! It's a connecting line.
There you go.
Cellar heat, furnace. Yeah, and you know what's funny is that nobody ever said, hey, Did you realize the last song that's ski puppy solar heat actually leads to furnace? Okay. Do you have any secret facts in your lyricals with all those
Lyrical.
language that you were speaking back then? Like,
Well, I don't know
I
if you can
always
see
like that.
this.
Mark would never come up with like a normal word. It'd be like kanaya.
Yeah. Well, this is a book that I used a lot, Beowulf, which is a Saxon poem, and it's written in Old English or whatever it is, and then you get the translation. And so I'd go away. I wouldn't read it, all the way through, but I'd kind of go through bits of it and I'd pick out words. And if I just go like this and then go, Ial deskviga, seo kal gran geman, ke kam gumena. It's like,
Oh, I
so
love
I can't pronounce it. I mean, that's Old English. And then the spear death of men is the spear death of men. Ger quam gomene. It's like incredible, isn't it? So it's like, yeah, so I nicked some of that. This was a book that I was reading at the time, Energy Plan for Western Man by Joseph Beuys. Energy Plan.
Oh, there you go.
So, I mean, if you just look through the books I was reading at the time, there'd be like whole chapters and you'd think, I can tell whose titles were what. Omni-Man is definitely not one of my titles. I think that's probably yours or Phil's. But if you look through the album, then I know why we called it Kanaya, because of that beat that comes in. And we were like going, oh, that's like can, yeah. And then No Man's Land is a link to Can as well, isn't it? Anyway, and but then there are tracks where I would just, literally take whole tracks of this. I mean, one of the nice things about the sleeve, I always thought this was a commercial. I don't know if it was a good commercial decision to put the lyrics for the album on the sleeve, but we did that. But we didn't do it for the Eyes of Stanley Payne. And the Eyes of Stanley Payne, the lyrics are more literal, whereas, I mean, it's probably wise that we didn't do it, isn't it? Because we probably offend people. If you think about Sidewinder, the lyrics to Sidewinder. But then on Furnace, we reproduced the lyrics. So you get the whole of the text for Kanaya. It's like, Yoas, Garest, Jamas, Salist, Sumat. It's just this list of words. But actually, half the time, I remember working on Kanaya, because Kanaya was in 2 or 3 parts, wasn't it? And you glued them together. So there's that section that was done live in improvisation where you come in with this massive drum thing, da 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 da. Then I'm playing the trumpet over the top of it. That was totally live. That was completely improvised. I remember that. But the beginning with the the beat and me talking over the top was me talking over the top of the beat. So and I think when we had the chat before, I would explain how this happened, because with Kevin, I'm a great believer in the first take, as I know Kevin is. But with when you're working with something with effects, when we were recording the vocals, I'd do it and I'd say, great, Kevin, that's it, right, I'm off now. And you go, no, tell you what, Mark, let's just do that once more. And I go, yeah, okay, let's do it once more. So you do it again, you think, oh, that's kind of interesting. And he goes, Mark, that was fantastic. That was really, really good. But I tell you what, let's just do it one more time. And so, you might do it 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 times, because you would take different words and you'd say, well, this works here and that works there. So actually, something like Kanaya and the way that the words worked was entirely due to the way that you edited it. It's not about me positioning words in any logical order. It's about you saying, well, this word works well here. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I remember that Kanaya was the first time that I had ever used Pro Tools as an editing set up. Before that I was using this thing that was kind of become obsolete now, and it was called Sound Designer. And what it was just a stereo editing program that you could assign regions, kind of like across the stereo audio file, and then it would reassemble them. And actually, was it called Sound Designer? I think it was called Sound Designer. But it was brilliant. And so then when it first came to using Pro Tools, um, the whole window just opened up as far as like what the potential was. And so yeah, you could think theoretically at that time about not just taking your stereo pieces, but also do that in vocals.
I do remember you took a lot. You spent a long time doing it as well. Like the editing for this Furnace was pretty much you, and that you spent weeks doing it.
I think a month. I think the
weeks and weeks.
Whole month of July. I remember it was a hot July in Vancouver, and I remember that I smoked cigarettes at that time. It was really horrible, but I just like smoke a lot of cigarettes during that mix. I always find that if I've ever smoked cigarettes, I actually will work longer, but that's weird.
I remember the flies in that studio that particular summer. Do you remember? There was loads of flies. Yeah.
Yeah, look at that smoke and flies. Yeah, no, it was a weird time, but so that must have been strange for you, being that you come from like a band where it's like minimalist idealism, minimalist packaging, and not anything about the ego in any sort of way. And then all of a sudden we're out there and we're realizing that we're playing shows where Mark is a frontman.
Yeah, it felt strange, but I think I just had my own way of doing it. Really, I wasn't trying to be a frontman. I wasn't trying to be, theatrical, because I mean, I can't do that. It's not my. Some people are fantastic at it. It's not my.
No, I thought you were good.
Well, thanks.
I thought you were good because your approach was something that I don't think many people have seen, where you just kind of like, you're not using regular microphones, or you're not using regular instruments, and everything that you were using was kind of irregular, and then you would be able to hear, well, listen to that toy and that sound he was doing, and then when you would do your stuff, then you were speaking your language. So it was like I thought it worked well.
I think you get better at it the more you do it, don't you? I was thinking today about those shows that you and I did in Eastern Canada, because we actually did them about the time that Furnace was released, didn't we? Do you remember?
Yeah, I just saw it right there. It was like it was like the fall of '95.
So Furnace I checked today, Furnace was released, according to the internet, on October the 3rd, 1995.
Yeah, so by Halloween,
we played 5 shows in Eastern Canada, you and I, as Dead Voices on Air, but we did some download songs, didn't we?
Yeah.
And we played in Toronto, and I forgot the name of that venue now. I know exactly where it is, Yonge Street, the little one.
The Rivoli.
Rivoli, yeah.
First time.
And then we played in London, Ontario, and we bussed the PA system. It kept blowing. And then we played in Hamilton, which was a great show. I remember that. It was Necropolis. And then we played did we play in Ottawa? Not sure we did.
I'd believe you if you told me. Oh, look.
Is that from a tree?
Yeah, actually, we have a plum tree in the yard.
Oh, right.
Now, kicking these down, man, it's the best plums you've ever had.
We've got a plum tree, but ours won't be ready until August, September. And then we played in Montreal at Foo Foons. I remember that. And I think Foo Electric
was kind of always been a legendary venue. Skinny Puppies played there a few times.
And everybody hits the head on the stage, do you remember?
Yeah. So
that kind of metal bar, and it's like they'll say, "You're going to hit your head on the stage," and I'm like, going, "No, I'm not," and everybody does. Yeah.
I really enjoyed those shows that we did as Dead Voices on Air because, you know, I don't think I'd ever done a show before that where it was ambient. And for the majority of that show, it was pretty much an ambient performance. I think we even did Doubting Thomas song or something.
Yeah, we did. Yeah, we did Energy Plan. I remember that.
I think we did Theme from Pressurehead.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Because yeah, that
Yeah.
was a great song. Yeah. But I think that was good for you and I because it gave us a. I mean, in terms of playing live, it gave us the chance. But I think you really, really helped me playing live. I mean, you basically bought me a setup. Do you remember? You bought me a flight case. You bought me, a place. I mean, it was custom designed, and it had a thing at the top for a mixer.
Oh yeah.
Had a couple of spaces for my effects units, and you bought me an Alesis Quadraverb, and I had the Boss SE50, and it had this drawer where I had a 4-track tape that I would use, to like mainly do effects on, and it all came down through a volume pedal. Do you remember that? Because he said what you need is control over feedback because you need to make sure because with the microphones and things. I mean, it worked really well.
Yeah.
But it was not easy because obviously you're playing against Drumosaurus's PA system that was bigger than monitor system that was bigger than a lot of the PA systems that we actually played through.
It was.
It was blooming loud. I don't remember it being loud.
It was clear though. That's the thing, is that it was loud. It was also like super high fidelity. And I have to blame that monitor system for sure a degree of hearing loss that I have now. It was just.
Well, you had your own sub. It had its own sub bass, didn't it? It had its own subs.
I mean, so I went on to use the same monitor system, when we reformed Skinny Puppy, and then I've toured with that monitor system up until I said, I think 2010 European tour was the last tour I used it on. And then at one point on that tour, I actually blew the sub, if you can imagine. That's how loud I was playing. I was playing at like 125 dB. It was like a jet engine if you come near me on the stage. But, I thought, it's okay. This is part of the sound. It was like, if it doesn't work, it's like kind of the sound has to get past me to be part. It just felt like it was like part of the room or part of the place. And then I realized that it's great and everything, but then I would come off stage and I couldn't hear anything. I'd be like fucking deaf.
I think I've told this story recently to somebody else, but it's a bit like when Peter Hook was asked about why he played so high in Joy Division. He said, well, because I couldn't hear myself when I was playing low, because it was loud. So he found a way of making it work. And I think we all did that when we played live, because it worked. I mean, you had two drummers, and Ryan also played the bass occasionally. And then you had Phil, and then you had you and I. And it worked. It worked really well.
I tried to rustle up Ryan Moore for a chat, maybe joining this chat. But Ryan is currently kind of been like working on the town of Nijmegen. He's kind of like hired by a company that does restorations of all the oldest buildings in that area. So I think he's become almost like that's his world. I mean, he's off the map. So
yeah,
I off the map.
Yeah,
so a lot of the Scots guys, are off the map. Like as far as that's concerned, like Martijn de Cleer. So my favorite as a drummer, I played with Martijn and Ryan a few times. As Last Man to Fly, Nine Lives to Wonder, and so on and so on. But both of those guys have like now they're completely like away from society. So it's kind of sad that, like, my point being is that because the music industry has become so disassociated with reality and being sort of like being supported anymore.
Yeah.
People that were sort of like some of the most unique players are not around anymore. You can't see them in there because they can't really afford to even think on that level. So you've got Ryan, you know, like restoring churches, and Martine, as far as I'm concerned, I know he's raised a family off the grid. He's basically um, one of these off the grid living people, like completely. But it's just interesting that um, you know, we find ourselves at one point all together in rooms making creative music, and then later we we're like doing something the complete opposite.
Yeah. 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 People find a way of making a living. Yeah, I only know of what's going on with Ryan through his
I'm going to try
partner.
to wrestle him up. I have promised myself that I'm going to get him on here for you guys, and we're going to talk and we'll chat about it. And see, I mean, Ryan, last time I talked to him, he was all happy and stuff, but he just, you know, he had to stop making Twilight Circus, and you know, of course, we made DubCon, and like, you know, it's he, you know, it's like he's done everything that he's probably needed to do. I think he said that
Did
he's
I
made
hear
every
that
record that he ever could.
he was having Did I hear he was having difficulty playing the bass because he had, was it carpal tunnel syndrome or something like that? Or am I getting him mixed up with somebody else? I can't remember now.
uh, I don't think he said that to me, but we'll have to
Oh,
ask him. I will get him on here. Mark, when I get Ryan on here, we'll bring you in.
oh yeah, yeah. I mean,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah. He's a great guy, right? The thing I remember about Ryan on tour is because he was really into his promoting his Twilight Circus. So
Oh,
whatever city he went to, Ryan knew somebody. So you'd get there and he'd say, like, look, I'll tell you what, I'll see you back in 2 hours. And he'd be like, phew, with a bunch of records under his arm, you know, a bunch of CDs. And he'd go to the local dub store or the person he knew from, you know, was distributing this, and he'd be really working all of the time, you know, doing stuff. Um, but
how we
yeah,
how we got on this topic, of course, is that we're talking about the live band, and then Ryan was the drummer in the live band. He would play. He had a K2000 drums and also played bass, but live somehow he just integrated again quite naturally within you, myself, and Phil. I guess Phil kind of stepped up and was kind of like occupying like the Dwayne position, and uh, and Ryan kind of moved into where the Phil world was at that point. So it kind of worked out. It kind of worked out good.
well, what was Phil had left the band not long.
After
What was it before Furnace was
four,
released? He left.
yeah, he freaked
Yeah,
out. I remember after Dwayne died, he basically that was it.
yeah.
He went. He said at that point. I mean, I was kind of worried because it seemed like he was like not doing too good, and he just took off to India.
That's right. And then he came back from India not long before
Went
we were going to tour. He
he was
said,
there, I think like 6 months or something, right?
yeah. And he came back probably only about a month or so before we toured
Yeah, we had
in
made Ozzy
Europe.
Stanley Payne. That's why Phil
Yeah,
isn't on.
yeah.
He's only on one song on Ozzy Stanley Payne because we had made it before he left.
And so you
And
said, is it okay if Phil comes? I'm like saying, of course it is, you know. Yeah.
yeah, well, I
Uh,
remember when Phil came back. He had had like a page change in his life, and he came back, and I think he even apologized. He came back and he said, "I'm sorry if I was acting weird before I left," and just wanted to be a part of everything again. So I thought that the most unifying factor of all would be to have everybody, you know, back again. And man, that tour was a gas. Mark, I've sent you the videos that are here on Patreon under the series link. You guys, if you go down there, you can see the Eyes of Stanley Payne tour. I think there's like 6 or 8 parts.
all right. I
And
like the video of the rehearsals in Niels's barn. Some
yeah,
really nice moments of that.
that that's so bizarre for me to think that actually we wound up at that same spot where the Pink Dots, you know, make the albums in It's called Klaverland, Holland. It's
Yeah,
outside of Nijmegen,
yeah.
about, let's say, about 35 minutes outside, and it's literally in like a protected area, a nature reserve. And Niels Van Horn lives there. He squatted this place out like back in the late 70s, I think.
Well, I think he's probably early 70s.
Early
Yeah,
70s. And
yeah.
basically, in Holland, basically, you can retain these places if you live there that long. So that's how he acquired it. But the barn, as seen in Nine Lives to Wonder and on that jam, download live at Niels. The funny thing is that when we showed up there, none of our equipment fit through the door. And we were sitting there going, what are we going to do? And especially it was all typically my gear because it was like Kevin has to bring the big gear, the big cases, and the big speakers. And so we hired a tractor. A tractor came along and actually lifted all the cases, all the
Forklift, isn't it? Yeah.
all the cases. And then there was a window that would open that had two doors that you could open. And that was big enough to bring some of the cases in. But that's how we actually had to load into that studio, was by tractor.
It's incredible. Yeah. I
And
ended up living there, you know. I ended up living at Niels's for 6 months in 2000 when I came back to Europe, and it was fantastic. It was lovely. It was really, really lovely place to live.
you did some
Incredibly
recording there
peaceful.
too?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I did a couple of. I recorded a couple of albums whilst I was there. Finished off this album called Frankie Pet. I named it
All
after
right.
Frankie. And another one that I did with Mick Harris when I was there as well. And I did some recording with Niels, and I also played some shows with Niels and his friend Bradley, who was just a fantastic drummer. But it was great. I mean, can you imagine living with Niels? It was incredible. Sklang!
I was shocked to see that Nils turned 70 the other day. I mean,
I know. Yeah.
like, what happened to the time? Seemingly just ripped by.
I know. I haven't seen Niels for 20 years.
Anybody that, you know,
20 years. I haven't seen him.
the time whipping by. I mean, like, so these tales that Mark and I tell about 25 years ago, they really don't feel like 25 years ago. It's kind of like, I guess it depends on what you do in your life. But if you're much like me, stick to doing the same thing that I was doing back then.
Well, do you remember when we were rehearsing at Niels's barn? Mark Nugent stayed in the barn, didn't he? We didn't. We were in a hotel in Nijmegen. But Niels had two very young children, and one of them, his son Bert, I recorded his voice, and it's on a record that I released called Frankie Pet, which is now, 23 years ago or something, 24 years ago, and 21 years ago maybe. And of course now, so Bert was about 7 at the time. So Bert is 27, 28. It's incredible. And it's just like, I still, like, we started this conversation by saying it's kind of like, logically you can understand the passage of time, but it's sort of difficult, isn't it? It's just literally 27 years ago, 25 years ago, 23 years ago. It's like, it just passes.
Yeah, when everything comes that long ago, it becomes kind of weird.
Tell you what I did find earlier on. I don't think I've ever published this photograph, but it was photographed on that download tour, and it was, I know where it was photographed because it was we played in Holland, Enschede. We played in Enschede in Holland. I remember the day because I think England played Germany in a football match at Euro '96 competition, European Football Championships, because we were touring with Howjob, and Howjob were German, and Phil Knights came to that show and was hanging out, and there was a bunch of us who were English, and it was like really quite tense there when we were watching this football game. This guy took a photograph that night, and it was just, I thought I'd show you this because it's a little bit.
Oh, I remember that night.
I don't know how to get this in.
I think you got it on green screen.
I have. Does that work?
Yeah, no, you can see that. Oh, that's great. I remember that guy's photo sessions that he did. He also took pictures of
Yeah.
of everybody, I think. But I got some black and whites of everybody.
Yeah, he's called Axel.
Yeah, Axel. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hi,
I think he
Axel.
was friends with the offbeat people.
Again, the good old crew of Offbeat. I don't think they exist anymore. Look, Brianna just showed me that we actually have apricots too.
Oh, right. Wow.
The
Yeah.
garden is just providing today. I saw you guys. Dan Armstrong says I saw you guys doing this in Eyes of Stanley Payne in some shopping mall in Virginia. It was pretty fantastic. Shopping.
Hey, Dan. Yeah, I do. I remember that's the one where we blew the power. And I think we talked about this last time. There was a chain of us because I think we blew it 2 or 3 times, and it was full. I remember the venue was full, and the guy from the venue said, "Look, I'm going to give this one more go," but he says, "I'm really worried about this in case I get a shock." And so there was a chain of us holding on to this guy as he was like, had the screwdriver in the wall. I mean, we were all like thinking, shit, I wish I'd worn some Wellingtons, It's like, remember it being a red hot night as well. Yeah, I do remember that show. It was Virginia, wasn't it? It was in Virginia.
Yes, it apparently was in Virginia. What city in Virginia? Let's say.
It was very close to Washington, D.C.
Let's say I'm going to need a hint there.
Well, Dan might remember.
Mark, did you play in a place called the Anchorage in Brooklyn?
I did, yes.
Brooklyn
yes.
Bridge.
I did. Yeah, the Anchorage was a festival that happened 3 or 4 times. And I got to play there because Mick Harris was due to play. It was when I was with Invisible Records, and he couldn't make it, so he asked me to do it. And it's an incredible venue because it's actually in it's on the Brooklyn side of the bridge, but it's in one of the huge stone towers that are support for the bridge. And it's so massive inside that it's like a stone cavern. Apparently it had a reverb time of 20 seconds.
That would work out for you, though.
Yeah. I worked with I invited 2 people to play with me, and it was James Plotkin and Jim Coleman, who was in a band called Cop Shoot Cop.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Wonder whatever happened to Cop Shoot Cop.
Oh, they're not going, but the drummer has been playing with the Swans for years, and I know Jim and Phil, the drummer, are now in another band. I can't remember the name, but I think they've just got a deal with somebody. So I only know what happened to 2 of them, Jim and Phil, but both still very active.
Dan says he has spoken to you. Dan Armstrong spoke to you when he was touring with the Vacuum Boys on the Stubnets.
I remember. Yeah. I remember meeting because I think Dan was living in Europe at the time.
He remembers you, Dan.
I'm sure he was living in Europe or visiting Europe, but I do remember him. Yeah.
Oh, I think you're thinking of Dan Handerberg.
No, I'm not. Dan Armstrong.
Oh, yeah. You know Dan. Okay, good.
Yeah,
good to know.
Yeah, he was definitely visiting Europe or living in Europe. Is that right, Dan? I can't remember which visit to the Stubnets. I've been there a lot.
He offered his place in Amsterdam.
Yeah,
and I remember. And for some reason, I could never get to Amsterdam when you were there. Or
there you go.
Whenever we went there, oddly, we'll tour Europe now and not hit Amsterdam. It's like my favorite city in probably the whole world, and we weren't hitting it, so it was kind of sad.
I know that the Stubnets got stuck in Amsterdam for a couple of years, and I played there twice whilst it was in Amsterdam.
Our tour ended and we were able to go there to Amsterdam quite a few times. That's where we usually end.
I can't remember. Was the last show in London?
Stubborn Puppet says, so we've talked so much about the past. Let's talk about the future now. When will you 2 be working on something new together?
Now, right now.
This is actually the way you start. And you know, I don't know. There come a time right now where I know that Mark will probably send me something, or I'll send Mark something. We'll see how that goes. But yeah, it's about that time. Would you say, Mark?
Yeah, definitely. When we chatted at the beginning of lockdown, it seems like years ago, doesn't it now? But when we started, I think we definitely both made a commitment to work together and to do a little tour together. So yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah.
I would love to do some of the parts of the Isa Stanley Pain tour again. Especially if we could rustle up Brian, or some of the other elements. We could definitely
Yeah,
do
it'd be
that.
fantastic. Yeah.
One thing that I've noted, though, that lately you've been doing a lot of live streaming, and so you're definitely getting, like, did you get inspired by your connection with the camera?
From you, from doing
Yeah.
the chat. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah, yeah. I never even thought about it before. I enjoyed the chat so much. I thought, well, let's just turn the camera on, because I've never done that ever
Yeah,
on Facebook. So I just
great.
turned it on.
So you've been recreating, like, older albums with, like, you're recreating an older album. Because is that just because you just saying, I just want to do it, or is it because you remember how you did the songs? You just think, seeing if it'll turn out the same?
I think on one of the live streaming events I did, I asked the question, so what would you like me to play? And a couple of people said, play some stuff off. Actually, no, the first thing that somebody said was really, really funny. He said, play some Skinner, man. So I did a live version of Freebird the next night, and then, but they were like saying, play some stuff off Shap and New Words Machine. I'm like thinking, sort of, I go, yeah, of course I'll do it. And I went away and thought, I can't do that, and I thought, well, why don't you give it a go? So I gave it a go, and I thought, well, why don't you do the whole thing, which was Shap, and Shap was like 21 tracks. So I thought, I'll give it a go, and I'll do it. And it's like, why not? And then I saw, I released it, and people were like saying, this is, they were supportive of it. Do you know what I mean? They were like, people are saying, I kind of like this. So I said, well, why not give it a go with New Words Machine? So I've done that. So I don't think I'm going to do any more, folks. If you come back and say to Kevin and I, you should recreate Furnace, I think the answer will probably be no, we won't. Although we haven't discussed it.
It absolutely couldn't be done. To recreate an album that's made out of chance, it's basically, yeah, can't be done. Can you hear it?
Yeah, a little finger piano. I can hear that, yeah. That was the first download show since 2012.
It is. You saw it right here, folks. For my next performance, I'm going
Rihanna was there. Rihanna was there. You sprained your ankle, didn't you? The last one we did.
Yeah,
in Moscow.
That was Kevin, yeah.
No, that was
really. Yeah, Kevin really knocked his ankle. Yeah.
Is that really the last show? Was in Moscow?
Yes.
The PA system into the crowd.
I suppose that's a rather nice way to end. That phase of the download world. It was in Moscow. It started off being like a really worrisome performance, and then ended up being quite fun in the end.
Well, I can remember you holding up a monitor speaker in the air saying, "This is not working."
I blew it in the first song. Typical me again with my volume. No, I blew. That was the problem, that whenever I would go and use sound systems in other clubs and stuff like that in other countries, I knew, okay, don't bring that stuff near me. It's gonna, I swear I'm the king of blowing speakers. So don't bring speakers near me unless they're like been bulletproofed.
There was that time in Philadelphia where we set fire to the subsystem under the stage.
Like, as I said, fire and speakers.
Yeah.
I think I'm one of the few people, that, as far as I know, that have fully set fire to a set of speakers just from a song being played while mixing.
Did you call a song?
It was
Is
a
it
song on the Hilt album.
Tweeter Blower?
It was a song on the Hilt album called "Smut Peddler Blender Liquor," and and basically, okay, if you play that song loud enough um, on a set of, I think they were tannoys speakers, you may be able to simulate the effect, but be warned.
Tweeter Blower. There you go. It's on Inception.
What's that?
There's a track called Tweeter Blower.
Oh, Tweeter Blower, of course, yeah, because
on Inception.
Because we couldn't play it without.
You had those little, was it MS-10 speakers, and
Yeah.
they had fuses in them. I remember like Ken Marshall having to change the fuses all of the time.
Yeah, that was a wise thing to do. Otherwise, you would be going through a lot of money. It's too
Yeah,
your speakers.
Yeah.
Sometimes now, though, like a fuse, like I have the speakers that we worked on when we made the albums and stuff like that, and they're still fused, but they blow pretty sensitively. I'll say
Yeah.
you need like a 2-amp fuse in there, and then basically, it's safe, but at the same time, it kind of like screws up your ability to get a good mix, because sometimes you need to push speakers a little bit to get like that eventual outcome.
I
So
think
what's
we
next,
pushed,
Mark?
we pushed a lot of speakers.
Are you going to do more live recordings or more of the live streams coming up, or are you?
Yeah, I am. I mean, I'm actually doing one next Sunday. It's sort of like it's cracked up, but it's for this. I don't know if you know the guy. He's called Darrell Hell from New York. When we were in Download, he was quite involved. I think he had believe it or not, I think he had a record company called Furnace Records, and it was related to Silent from San Francisco. And he's putting together this live event next Sunday, and he asked me to do it. And then suddenly, lo and behold, the Residents are doing it as well, Consolidated. There's a bunch of people who are doing this live event. So he's just going to be doing it through Zoom like this. But I like, what I do is I come into the studio on a night, I get a sound together, and I think, you know what? Let's just go for this. Let's just do it. And then I'll go live. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. People have been very polite. They're not telling me if it's a load of crap, but I've only once or twice actually promoted the fact that I'm going to do it. Usually it's just I'll just turn the camera on, say, hi, how you doing?
You know what we tried last time on here, where you can change the input source to your actual sound card?
Yeah.
Can you do that when you do your live streams on Facebook?
No, you can't. As far as I'm aware, you can't. You can do it on here. I mean, I could play live now if I wanted to, but you can do it on here.
That really makes a difference. I noticed that, like my friend Basic, when he does his live streams, basically he switches over to the sound card, and it sounds you lose that room sound that
I
basically
know, yeah, I know.
comes with the live stream.
Yeah, what I've been doing though is I've been recording the live things that I've been performing and onto Pro Tools, and then editing them and then releasing them through Bandcamp.
Oh, good.
I've done in lockdown. I've done 3 of those volumes plus three volumes of isolation tapes or whatever I'm calling, and then sharpened New Words Machine. So I've done 5 things during lockdown. So that's also because I've retired from work, so I've got more time on my hands.
What was your favorite song that you heard on Furnace when you re-listened to it then? Did any of them strike you?
Mother Son. Mother Son. Closely followed by Seeger Sang. Mother Son, because it's got a lot of memories for me. Because I used a poem that I'd written about my dad, and the second part of which is bass metal. So it's a kind of part of this group of poems that I wrote. But when I listen to that, I can still really get into the feelings of it, because it took on a whole different feeling with Dwayne passing away, and now it takes on a whole different feeling because of Phil as well. So yeah, I immediately got into that zone with it. It's really a powerful song as well. You know, when that beat kicks in,
Yeah.
that boom, da 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 boom da da. It's like,
It's
you know,
always
it's literally, it's fantastic when it plays live. I can remember that, you know, always getting the spine tingles. And you know, Sega Sang is just brutal, isn't it? It's when he gets into that kind of like that jackhammer beat. It's it's like, oh, you just, you know, there's yeah,
I
not a
played,
lot of music that does that to me, but that certainly does it. Yeah.
I played a lot of gigs with Skinny Puppy and not as many with Download, but when we used to play with Download and play those particular songs, I used to see a reaction from people in the audience that I didn't see in Skinny Puppy. So something about those songs basically got people, especially in '96 at that point, got people.
Turin Shroud does that as well, for me as well. And I could see that when we played that live, you know, when we did those shows in 2010, 11 and 12, whenever it was. But when we did that song live, you can see it goes into that zone of there's just a frenetic energy to it. You know, it's very, very, very powerful, and it gets people. I think Sidewinder does as well. Glassblower. There's a number of songs that really get into that zone for me. What about you? What, you know, when you listen to Furnace now, what do you like to hear?
I wonder how certain sounds got made. I remember, but I look back and think, oh, that sounds good. What was that? Like, I mean, I really like Stone Gray Soil. It's just because it's
I was listening to that
so.
today.
It has a. I mean, if you said, okay, yeah, this is a cross between Soviet France and Skinny Puppy, that song really does sound like that.
Yeah, yeah.
So I like it for that. You know what flavor that is, whatever.
Atalal does that as well, I think.
And of course, Atalal is super special because that was the last song that Dwayne ever played on in his life.
Yeah.
And so that has a special place for sure. I don't know. I mean, I thought it was also quite fluky how well some of the voices that Genesis Pjorge contributed, or that we took from the Puppy Gristle sessions that I just had there, how well that kind of worked for what it was. I think like initially, I think I told Dwayne, oh, I added some Genesis Pjorge stuff, and he was like, uh-oh. I was like, no worry, I think it works. And it was cool how that all worked out. But I don't know. In the end, the album is something that just the whole package, the whole memory of it, and sharing it with you, Mark, was like a great time.
Yeah. It was it was a very inventive time. I think that's reflected in the music. I mean, there's a couple of other quotes that I found today you might find funny. Oh yeah, Seeker sang and Mother Son want you to hit the dance floor with a chainsaw. Sliced and diced vocals that will rip your wallpaper off. Listen, I love that. Sliced and diced, sliced, diced and chunked. Waffle House. Listen alone at high volume. When the music stops, you're bathed in sweat, looking around, wondering what you've just listened to.
So you've been living back in the UK now for, how long have you been back there for?
20 years.
What? What? Are you kidding me?
No, 20 years.
Everything, as I said, everything we always talk about, it's like, what? How many years ago was that? I'm expecting you to say like something stupid like 8 years.
Yeah.
20 years. So
20 years.
So the time when you were in Download and the time that you made those albums, you were actually living in Vancouver, Canada.
Yeah.
A different country than where you're naturally from. And then when you were touring around here, you got to see, I don't know, I got to say at that time when we toured it, it was a pretty lo-fi tour. And we played things like, some of the hardest cities like Detroit and all the areas. So what's your takeaway from that after it all? You experienced back on Must Be.
I felt it was fantastic because obviously, the download one was the first time I toured. I mean, I have good memories of both of the tours, but I think probably better memories really of the one in the States, because when I'm talking to mainly people in the North America right now, so they're going to think, what are you talking about? Well, I'm from a very small town in the northeast of England. Let me tell you, when you're in Phoenix, Arizona, it feels really, really, really different to the northeast of England. And just Detroit. I mean, Detroit was. I mean, we went back to Detroit, didn't we, 10 years ago? And it was like a ghost town. The whole of the downtown area it was like totally strange. But even at that point in time, we played at St. Andrew's Hall in Detroit. I'm in
Remember the
Detroit.
story on that one?
Yeah, we were late. Yeah.
We actually arrived at the show at 10:30 at night, and we got there into a lineup that was coming out of the building. They hadn't let anybody in, and I guess they weren't even expecting us to show up. And we showed up, and we're like, we're so sorry, we can set up in 1 hour. And we had set up, and we were already on stage playing, remember, in less than 1 hour.
It was incredible. I mean, yeah.
We luckily got paid and got out of there. But yeah, no, that tour, we had a lot of those scenarios where it was like the Pay Your Dues tour was definitely, in full effect. And that day, Phoenix you're referring to, I think we played at this place where it was like 115 degrees or 116 degrees outside.
Phoenix.
Yeah. You could walk outside that day. And I remember looking at you, this like British guy, like, in the desert. It's like, holy shit.
It was incredible. I mean, you can't, it's like I say, just to experience it's incredible. Yeah. I remember like New Orleans, I remember it was so humid. We loaded the gear in. You felt like you needed to change because you were just drenched in sweat. And then 10 minutes later, you were drenched in sweat again. And then at some time during the afternoon, the heavens opened. For 10 minutes, it rained. And you were soaking wet because of the rain. And then 10 minutes later, you were dry. And it's like when you played the show. I mean, I didn't really look after myself in those days. Now I'd be like thinking, oh, I'm going to dehydrate. I must drink lots and lots of water. But it was a fantastic experience. I wouldn't have missed it for the world.
Danny Lohner recently, who used to be a Nine Inch Nails, and he told me that they all came to that show and were pretty blown away by that show that we did in New Orleans. So.
Oh right.
Yeah.
I think it was in like a blues, like a jazz or a blues venue. It was really small.
So, Mark, are you doing something? I'm just reading here on the side. Stephen Clifton's talking about vocal samples. Have you been putting out vocal samples on your Bandcamp?
I've only done one years ago, probably about 10 years ago. I did a sample CD. But I should do it. I've been thinking about doing another one, but it's quite finicky work, isn't it? Doing samples.
Yeah, I mean, it's a unique time. So basically, like with Patreon, I like the idea now of being able to put a song and say, hey, who wants to try vocals on this? Or, giving an opportunity to somebody. People may not know that there's a couple of guys from my Patreon that are actually now appearing as guest musicians on my album. So, these type of things are this collaborative world, this new way of making like sounds available to people is like, I guess it's one of the new ways of working. But Vertgeberb, what was the impetus for Furnace Redux? So Furnace Redux was interesting in that Phil Western took the original jams. So originally I took them, and some of the jams for the songs for Furnace were like 25 minutes long. And then I had to whittle them down to a song length. So 4 or 5 minutes long in editing. And later, I'm not sure if Phil actually used the original DAT tapes, or the original DA88 tapes, multi-track tapes. I'm pretty sure he did. So what he did was he went in and instead of doing the same editing, he just took the original jam and made an edit of what was be a portion of what was the original jam. So actually, Furnace Redux is sort of like what you might call the source material for what would have become Furnace later. But it's odd that Furnace Redux was made after Furnace. So basically, you could see it as like a second approach to the same jam DATs, to the same jam tapes. So it just goes to show you how different, depending on who's approaching it. So I'm Furnace number 1, and Phil Western is Furnace Redux. So it's a good way to look at it. And also interesting perspective, depending on when you look at it. Dan, it's been good to see you. Thank you for joining the chat. And we actually got a jam here too. We've been here almost an hour and 36 minutes. I'm terribly sorry about the lack of link on Patreon today. Thank you to Tony for clearing that up for everybody. And thank you to everybody for joining us now here for the 3rd time.
Yeah.
The legendary Mark Spybey. Mark, you didn't have any show and tell today. What's the deal?
Well, I sort of did. I showed you a book. Quick. This is the. I think this is from the last show that we did. That's the ticket. Like
Plan B.
Simon Paul's design, isn't it?
I think that's one of yours, Simon.
I love that. I love that design. That's like, so Russian, isn't it?
We'd be nothing.
I'm pretty sure that was the last show.
Simon is the guy that covers us up. Oh, there you are. Hey, bud.
I've got the T-shirt on as well.
Yeah, I got one on today too. I don't know if that's Simon though.
It is. I'm pretty sure that's Simon as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Rihanna has hers.
That's great. God, I never got one of those shirts.
You didn't? What a shame.
No.
We did have a couple here, but we sold out, and then we sent back the ones to Phil's family. There's that. Oh, that classical old school picture there. I love that era.
These are like big. I can't get this. I don't know how you turn this screen thing off. The green screen.
You go down and
Stop video, is it?
To the arrow up. Go to the second arrow up. Hit your choose virtual background, and then it will say, "I have a green screen. Turn that off." There you go. The wonders of Zoom, man. There's so many tricks you can do in here.
Yeah. So these were like full size. I mean, the lot was like LP size things that I think it was Network put out.
That was also another good thing about Offbeat is that they were really helpful in like setting us up with Dave McKean and like covering the costs for such a thing.
Do you remember Offbeat were fantastic as well? So we said, we said that Kevin and I used to have this expression, and we used to say it a lot to each other. We just go, "Kill."
Oh, I got a good story for you on this.
Yeah.
Keep on going.
So we asked. So we said instead of chill out, we said, our music is more like kill out. And so we said to Offbeat, on the back of the T-shirt, the tour T-shirt, can you put the words "kill out"? Thinking they'd never do it, and they did it, didn't they? It's on
the back of the shirt.
The microscopic shirt.
We used to say that a lot. Me and you would be in some environment that was like totally quiet, and then you turn to me and go, "Kill."
That's right.
Or I would go, "Kill." And it was sort of like this like joke that we had that okay, you want to hear something funny? This is a true story, and this is another story that you won't believe. Okay, so the kill thing went on for a little while. I kept on saying kill for quite a while after that. As a matter of fact, even up until the time where I was living here in early 1998, I was still saying kill. But what I would do is that I would associate if I was with you, it'd be like, kill Mark or kill Iggy or, you know, whatever. But on this particular day I was with, and you're going to find this funny. I was with my roommate who was here at the time. And we went out for lunch and we were sitting at this place. And I said, Kill Bill. And guess who was sitting right next to me?
Quentin Tarantino.
Quentin Tarantino. Yes, I swear upon my life. And I said, Kill Bill. And I know that Bill was like, oh, shut up. But it was like, Kill Bill. And I was on my trip. You know how we used to say it.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, not all of a sudden, he was writing. Tarantino was writing. And so I'm pretty sure that 1998 came before the release of Kill Bill. Someone out there can do the math and see that is the case, but I'm nearly certain of it. So I'm saying that there could have been a subliminal suggestion from the Kill shirt that inevitably ended up in Hollywood film. I would really like to ask Quentin Tarantino that someday if I was ever given the chance, if he would remember that moment.
He'd be like, yeah, I was having dinner one day and there was this Kevin Key was there and I was like, you know, he didn't know that I knew him and I was watching him and then he suddenly said the word Kill Bill and there's me writing it down thinking that's the title of my new film.
Or maybe he was looking for a title and then that just basically, you know, was like, oh, that's it, that's the right title. But I swear on my life that is a true story. And yeah, you see, Kill Bill was sometime after 2000 to 2004. So there you go.
It's like, you know, it's just strange where you find the titles or like Glassblower was my funny story. I got a call, I think you were in Jamaica and it was the last day of working and Anthony had come up with, finished off some stuff that you'd done for this song. And he was up at Brian Adams' studio in North Vancouver, and he was there with Ken. He says, Mark, I'm going to send, I can't remember who the guy was. He was really nice. He's going to come over, pick you up in the car. He's going to bring you over here, and I want you to do some vocals on this track. So I thought, okay, yeah. So I, you know, shot over there, and he was like, going, right, this is the track. He played it to me, and I says, well, I haven't got any words. So I said, like, give us 5 minutes. And there was a copy of the Vancouver Province. And so I picked up the Vancouver Province on the front page or something. It was like Scud attack. And it was like a Scud missile attack into Israel from Iraq or wherever. And so I just took some of the words and I just like sort of like rephrased them and moved them around. And that became Glassblower. But obviously the title Glassblower has got nothing to do with the content because Anthony named the title because he was really into this girl at the time who was a glassblower. Do you remember that? I mean, I don't know who the girl was, but I don't know if they ever, you know, had a relationship. But I do know he, you know, that's why the song was entitled Glassblower. So things take on a life of their own, don't they? Just because of, you know, circumstances.
I think on that trip to Jamaica, I actually cut a dub plate in the studio with some guys. Like that I pulled off the street basically. And I was like trying to get them to do toasting for us. It actually ends up as the intro to Sidewinder.
Oh, right.
It's the patois speaking. And
too much disrespect Rasta.
Yeah. And so yeah, I was like trying to get some like regular stuff going and they were totally on a different level. So it was like, it was another collision again of, but my memories of it are like hardcore. We actually cut that straight to a 10-inch dub plate. That's actually released on the Inception album, the full. I think it's called Dub Plate from Mochi. And
right.
Yeah, that's was one of the original pieces. But yeah. That's a fun album too. Most of that stuff, yeah, was like the very first, again, an extension to the very first jams that we did when we got together in the studio. And there it is. There it is, magical old place.
incredible, isn't it?
It wasn't a big room in that one. That was the main
No.
control room. But that album is also indicative of the same time period of Furnace.
I remember on the wall that you can't see, there was a Pulp Fiction poster.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
You can see it on the video for 23 years for download of the new album. Actually, what's uncanny about that is that video footage of Dwayne and Phil that I found to make that video was like one of the first times I ever met Phil. He was like 23 years of age and walked in and there just sort of goofing about on the Moog with the Pulp Fiction poster in the background. Yeah, that was the space and the days, man.
Yeah.
But hey, man, it's been a pleasure to chat with you again and to spend the time with you again, Marky.
And you, as always, thanks a lot for asking. I'm
thank you.
honored.
The sample from the beginning of Siege Sang with the guy talking about berries was a Dwayne sample. We don't know where that came from. I think that was an indigenous fellow that was speaking about some the problems that were going on with his tribe.
I was just thinking about that when you were referring to the sample that you used on Sidewinder. I mean, I was listening to that today, and I was thinking that guy's definitely Canadian. I could, you know, like I know you could definitely tell the guy's Canadian.
It's definitely a Canadian with a heavy accent. It's probably an indigenous guy, and he was. I remember Dwayne was pretty into that idea of indigenous rights, which I am as well, and I think we all are.
Yeah.
So, anyways, there's so many stories for so many times, but I'd like to thank again all you Patreon folks for tuning in. Marky Spybey over there in the north of England. Say hi to north of England and have some fish and chips on us.
Not been going out for things like that for a while.
Yeah, same. But have yourself a good day, and thank you one and everyone for tuning in.
Thanks a lot, Kevin. Take care. Say hi to the Rihanna, and bye-bye, folks. And
say bye, Rihanna.
Hi.
Hi, bye, Rihanna.